All right. Good morning, everyone. It's very nice to welcome everyone to this next edition of Choice Chats here in Tennessee with the American Federation for Children. My name is John Patton. I'm the Tennessee State Director, and I'm excited to have another conversation today with a parent in East Tennessee, Beth Stovall, and excited to talk to her and hear a little bit about her experience with her kids and in the school system in which they live, and to kind of hear about some challenges and also ways in which we think that more educational options would be advantageous, and ways in which Tennessee children and families all over the state could benefit from having more school choice. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Beth. Welcome, Beth.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's very, very nice to have you. And I know we are starting a few minutes late, so apologies on that. We have some technical difficulties on my end if you are joining us live. So, Beth, I would love to start out by asking you to give just a little bit of your background, kind of how long you've been in the area and how many children you have, and some details like that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, my husband and I have been living in Knox County for a little over 7 years. My husband was in the Army for 20 years and retired, and we moved here. And we have 5 children. My oldest is 13, Mackenzie. My second oldest, Lily, is 11, and then Gretchen is 9, and I have a 5-year-old, Noel, and then a little boy who is 3, almost 3, Fletcher.
Okay.
So a lot of age groups, a lot of different needs. We have a teenager, and then I have a toddler, and just different needs for all of them.
Yeah, that's a pretty big range, 3 to 13. Mine are kind of crammed in 12. I've got 4 kids, 12 to 7. But even at that, even with those close gaps, their needs and their learning needs are pretty substantially different. So that the 10-year spread is certainly requires different things from you guys and your kids' educational needs. I would love to know kind of what was your situation when the pandemic started. Kind of what were you guys doing for school, and then what was that transition like, kind of into?
So like March 2020, I mean, like everybody else, hearing news coming from China and then Italy, just a lot of fear, especially coming from the media. And then it seemed like everybody latched onto that fear. Everything closed down, our schools closed down. And from when it first did it, they made it sound like it was going to be temporary, maybe. Because I think it was like the Thursday or Friday before spring break. So we had spring break, and then it just kept getting extended. And here in Knox County, there was nothing that was given out educationally. We didn't have Zoom school. We were not giving any packets. Pretty much the school year stopped in March.
Mm-hmm.
They did not give us any guidance as parents. So I had, 5 children, and I was kind of like, what do I do? They don't need to be sitting around watching TV all day. I did start finding things online like math and books. I mean, even that was hard because the libraries closed down.
Right.
I did contact some of their teachers, like, okay, what were they doing when, or what should they be doing the last fourth of the school year? And I was given a little guidance, but it was just kind of like being thrown into a situation you have no idea what to do. It was tough. Everyone kind of experienced the same thing, but I have friends and family in different situations, and their school systems like pivoted really well. And we're doing things online, continuing on and trying to finish out the curriculum, but Knox County did nothing. We did get some packets like the end of April, but they weren't graded. They were not new material. They're all review. So it was like fourth of the school year, just didn't happen, which is strange because in before times, any unexcused absence was frowned upon. You heard a lot about learning loss. You need to make sure the kids are at school as much as possible. If you miss 10 days, you're going to get truancy. I mean, that was pretty much drilled into parents' heads, and I took that seriously. I mean, we don't, I know some families will take time to go on vacation, go to Disney World when the lines are shorter, and we never did that. And I know a lot of people give families flack for doing that, and then the schools closed down for 3 months, and nothing. There was no talk about educational loss. It just was like, we're put on a raft in the sea and said good luck.
Yeah.
So it really kind of like, what if the school systems can close down whenever, willy-nilly, really? I mean, what does that say for the future? It really showed me how little control families have in a public school over what decisions are being made. Even if we elect the school board, there are a lot of outside influences that seem to have more influence than parents do. And that really, my husband and I really had some difficult conversations on and especially as through April and May, everyone, was looking at New York City and seeing, oh, that could be us. And they were talking about the school year, what it was going to look like, mask, quarantining, contact tracing, isolation, virtual learning. And I mean, again, like in before times, every time I went to the pediatrician, my pediatrician were like, you make sure you're limiting screen time to like 2 hours a day max. It's good for young brains. This is the official position of the AAP, the CDC. And again, that went out the window too. And I was like, I'm not going to do that to my children. They need consistency in their lives. I'm just not going to send them off into a school that I can't even physically go in. I mean, I still can't physically go into their schools, some of the public schools. I'm just not going to do that. So we started looking at homeschooling, and pretty much spent the summer researching curriculum, just seeing like, okay, so what do they need for, I had 3 children that were going into 7th, going into 4th, and into 3rd. What does the Tennessee Department of Education say they need to be learning in those? It's complicated. I feel like make it so complicated. I mean, so I just use that and watch YouTube videos to see what kind of curriculum, and there are so many choices out there. There in homeschooling curriculum. It's refreshing, but it can be overwhelming.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a different mindset, the homeschooling mindset for sure. How did you feel? So that tail end of 2020 was kind of everything shut down. Kind of the school districts around the country had time to kind of plan for the 2021 school year. How was your experience once? I guess, did the schools open straight away in August 2020? Okay.
They ended up opening 2 weeks late. Like Knox County has, they had kind of a 10-day buffer that they use. They add 45 minutes onto each day. So there's a 10-day. And so they took those 10, they're usually for like snow days, or like they would close schools occasionally for flu. They used those at the first of the school year. So they opened 2 weeks late and did start in person. They did have a virtual option that you could go in. I think it was by semester. So if you stayed in, you had to stay in the whole semester. So I'm glad that they did. That was because I know a lot of families can't choose to homeschool. They have two working parents, they're single parents, they're grandparents that can't physically do it. So they did open up, but there were a lot of restrictions. They, school by school went virtual at different times. But it was chaotic from the parents that I do know that sent their kids to school. It was kind of like you're, waiting for the call that your kid has to quarantine, or they've been in close contact. There, of course, were masks required. And it seemed like it was still, everyone was kind of living in fear during that time. I know a lot of teachers were afraid. I think a lot of people are not very good at a risk assessment. And so they were still afraid for their own children, even though every data point we have for children is like so good. They are not really affected. Very healthy children, normal healthy children are not affected. But there were still people that were, even now, it's just so fearful. I did not want that for my children. I didn't want the starting and stopping and the possibility of it, closing down again for months on end. I just wanted to completely get out of that, control what I could control as a family, and homeschool at least for a year.
Yeah.
So that's what we joined an umbrella school. Joined a co-op that met once a week. Because there were some things that I wasn't, especially for my 7th grader, that I was more comfortable with her learning from someone, a more professional teacher. That this co-op we picked does have professional teachers that are, used to be teachers, have stepped away because they're homeschooling their own children or for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm. No, you're good. So you had a homeschool situation for, I guess, the entirety of the 2021 school year, some co-ops, some, a little bit of more advanced help for your oldest for certain subjects. Okay.
She did English at the co-op, which I'm not as comfortable with. And then we, math, social studies, history, and science did at home with homeschooling. You picked a curriculum, and the curriculum was more geared towards our family values too. It's a Christian-based curriculum, which you're not going to see in a public school. So that was good because it was very good perspective for my kids, and I think they enjoyed it. They did miss their friends.
Yeah.
And that's it was a good year. It had some challenges, but I think it gave me some confidence because if I ever have to homeschool again, I know exactly
You'll be ready.
I'm ready. Yes. Because I was really afraid of myself. Am I capable of doing this? Do I have enough patience? Will it be really? Will my kids actually listen to me? Will they, sit and do the work for me?
Yeah.
That was. But it ended up working out, and I'm glad we did it.
Well, so at the end of the school year, obviously there's some, I think, upside of kind of families getting to spend more time together, and then kind of teaching, inculcating your value system, Christian values into your kids. In terms of kind of educational outcomes, are you obviously that you don't have a standardized test you're giving them at the end of the year, but do you feel like it was a pretty productive, the kids they learned and it was a good year and everything?
Yeah. So my oldest is now in a private school, and so when we enrolled her, they did do some placement tests for her, so they knew kind of where to put her in 8th grade, and so she's in the honors courses.
Yeah,
She tested into algebra, so
that's
doing.
great.
And then my 5th grader now, my 4th grader, they, because we did an umbrella school, we didn't have to do the TCAP last year, which my 3rd grader would have done. But they've done some other, like, I think it's Ames test.
Yeah.
They do it's reading and math. And they've scored they're very high. They're in like the high 90s%. And
Yeah.
this
Wow.
that was before. They were scoring like that before homeschooling, so they went fine. They went through homeschooling, and it was as good, if not better, than what they would learn in public schools. And I mean, if you've ever homeschooled, it takes half the time to.
Right.
I mean, some days they were done in less than 2 hours. Some days were longer. Just because of how we, scheduled everything. But, and because it didn't take that long, they were able to learn a lot of other things. They learned how to do some, simple cooking.
Yeah.
My one daughter, my 11-year-old, she is so creative. I do not like crafting. It's not, my strong suit, but she loves it, and she will, she just had so much free time to do all this creative stuff.
Yeah.
Take cardboard boxes and making into all kinds of things that I would never even think of. So, I mean, they were really, we call them silver linings.
Yeah.
And we did spend a lot of time together, and I got a very, front row seat to seeing what they should be learning, what they are capable of. And to see, like, because they are, I mean, just to be transparent, they are very advanced students.
Yeah.
And we put a big emphasis on education, and while they love going to school and seeing their friends, they could probably be they could do more.
Yeah.
Could really be pushed more to do more advanced things, and they do. There's our school, the elementary school, does do gifted and talented,
Yeah.
but I really think that they could be pushed to do more advanced things.
Yeah.
They're doing a lot of stuff right now, and I think the school system, because of the 3 months that were lost, and then last year, so many were doing virtual, and just all the stopping and starting, that the public schools are playing catch up right now.
Right.
There's a lot of things that they should have done last year, and this is coming directly from my kids, because I'm like, well, why are you still doing multiplication tables in 5th grade? You mastered those last year. You should be moving on. And that, well, we're still doing some things that they didn't get to cover last year.
Yeah.
And it showed in the TCAP scores that there was learning loss. And I think, Governor Lee had a big to-do about that. He made it so there are very strict restrictions on who could do virtual for this next year.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I think there has to be more done. And I think the big, we decided to go back into public school for to my 5th and 4th grader now, and my new kindergartner, because, well, first of all, Governor Lee signed the executive order for the opt-out on masking.
Mm-hmm.
And then our school board voted twice to make mask optional. So we were more comfortable, and we asked especially our older two that are in elementary school, like, do you want to, if there's a mask mandate, do you want to be homeschooled again? Or if there's mask optional, do you want to go back to school? And they really wanted to go back to school. They didn't want to wear a mask, and they wanted to go back to school. So naively thought it was settled.
Yeah. And this
So,
was time frame wise when the school boards voted on it, and then Governor Lee. About what month was this roughly?
Governor Lee, I think, did the executive order early summer.
Early summer. That sounds about right.
There was some talk about calling a special session, but he decided that was not needed, and he did the executive order for a parental opt-out of mask. Our school board voted before school started, so this was early August, to make a mask optional. Very heated school board meeting, very heated.
Sure. Yeah.
And then they called because there were rising cases in Knox County during August. And there was a call for a special session. And again, they voted to make mask optional still. So I thought, we've made a good decision. At our kids' elementary school, about 95% of the kids were not wearing masks.
Okay.
50-50 on the teachers.
Yeah.
School started. So
school starts, and you got one, your oldest in private school, and then three in the local public, and then one kind of pre-K basically.
Right. So I was, and of course the private school, no mask. Again, mask optional. And that was never even they didn't wear masks last year either. It was an optional too.
Yeah.
So, and then 2 weeks before fall break, so it was the very end of September. There had been a federal lawsuit filed in federal court in Tennessee using the Americans with Disabilities Act against the Governor Lee because of his executive order, and this Board of Education here in Knox County to using the Americans with Disabilities Act that they weren't making reasonable accommodations for some special needs children. And the judge decided to make an injunction against the school board and Governor Lee for universal masking, saying that it was a reasonable accommodation to children, 60, it's a reasonable accommodation to protect 4 children, to mask 60,000 plus children and administrator and teachers. And it's still there. I think there's an appeal. They appealed to, I know the AG has appealed to the 6th Circuit, and the Board of Education has also. And according to the superintendent, there's the appeals proceedings. There's going to be some in December and some in January. But I really don't know much about how federal courts work.
Yeah.
I mean, some cases go really quickly, and some are just drag on forever. So there doesn't seem to be any relenting from this one judge, this federal judge, on his. It's a very strict. It's more strict than last year's masking rules. And I, just to go back to kids, how they learn, the best environments for them. And I truly believe that the best environment for my children to learn in is in one that they can see their teachers' faces. They can have free, their face, no mask on their face. So they can hear clearly what teachers are saying and what their peers are saying. And especially my kindergartner, she's 5. She is learning to read. She's learning to blend sounds, and I talked to her kindergarten teacher, and just talking. It was just a conference, regular school conference, and she was saying that this is something that Noelle needs to work on, blending sounds, and so I was like, well, how does that work with both the children and the teacher masked? And she said it's very difficult. And then last year, because the masking came from the school board, there was a little more leniency. If the teacher was 6 feet away from the children, they could take their
Right.
mask. And so she did that last year when she was teaching kindergarten.
Oh, wow.
So if she was 6 feet away, which that's been the standard, she could take her mask off so that the kids could hear her, they could see her mouth,
Yeah.
and see how the letters blend together and the sound that they make. And this year she cannot do that. Well, she could do that for the first
Wow.
8 weeks of school, but she can't do that now.
But since the injunction has been issued, that you cannot remove it.
No,
not at all.
Feet away. Not if you're alone in your classroom. Only if you're eating and drinking, or you're outside. And this is kind of something that's also funny, not funny. One of my kids is going on a field trip, and permission slip, and they're going to, I don't know if you know much about Pigeon Forge. They're going down to
a little bit.
Underworks down in Pigeon Forge, which is something that fourth graders do every year. And they're going to ride the bus, and they're going to go to Pigeon Forge, which has no mask mandate. There's no mandate in Sevier County. The businesses down there have them, really. They were open before anybody else was open, really. They have to wear their mask at Wonderworks, even though they're probably going to be surrounded by a bunch of kids that don't have masks, and adults too. So it's just nonsensical. It really is. And I called the central office yesterday and was kind of like, where in this injunction does it say if they're off school grounds on a non-mandatory field trip that they have to wear a mask? And so the legal department is based on the intent of the injunction, has made this decision. So it's just
that sounds like covering your rear end a little bit.
Well, it is because because it came down from a federal judge. The fines, if they are not in compliance, are enormous.
Wow.
I mean, and so whenever I talk to someone at the central office, they very much emphasize the non-compliance fines. It's never talk about what this is doing to the education of all the kids in the county. It's all about, it came from federal judge, and the fines are this much, and we can only do this, and and it doesn't. And as a parent, I cannot do much. I can call as many representatives and I have, and then they supposedly Governor Lee is going to be signing it soon, but the COVID omnibus bill that has rules in it about mask mandates in schools, very clear, but this will do nothing for Knox County because we're under a federal injunction. So, but it just is kind of opened my eyes to what, especially in this administration, what the federal government can do to local, even some of the other things not related to schools, how much power they have, and how powerless we as parents have in these decisions that are being made for our children. And I contrast that with my daughter, my oldest, who is at a private school, and it's like night and day. There has been no talk about mask. All of our teachers don't wear masks. She can hear them, see their faces. She can see all her friends' faces. She just went last week, just to contrast the field trip. She just went on a 2-night, 3-day field trip to one of our local Christian camps here. It's down in the cities. And had a great time. And and I feel a little guilt because she's having such a great experience at her school. And learning so much and just being around just a good learning environment. And then
Yeah.
my 3 others, well, it's not, it's not awful, it's not bad, but it's different. They're not getting the same experience, and
Right.
it's very frustrating.
Mm.
And we talked a little bit about when the injunction first came down on a Friday, and they had the school board had the weekend to figure out, and they were like universal masking, and there was a group of parents that were like, well, this is not right, we've got to do something. So we kind of all got together and we're like, well, we'll just send our kids without masks to kind of make a point that
Mm-hmm.
the judge, part of his reasoning that this was a good, that Knox County could do this, the school board could do this, was that there was so much, the compliance the year before was so good. So we're like, well, maybe we should not comply. So, my kids, they were allowed for 2 weeks to be put into an isolation area away from the other kids that were masking, because they refused to wear a mask. And there were a small group of kids, and they had an okay time.
Yeah.
But they were separated from their peers for everything, even the outside recess time. Even though everyone else was masked, they had to do it separate at a different time, so no one else was on the playground with them. Like they were unclean.
Oh man,
and
that's tough.
Separate, even though everybody else was eating lunch without their mask on. My kindergartner, I have no idea what she even did. I know she had some work to do, but again, when I talked to her kindergarten teacher, the work did not come from her teacher. She never got whatever my kindergartner finished. I have no idea what she did. I mean, I have, kindergartners are only so reliable. Okay, what'd you do today?
Right.
And they were separate and not equal what they were getting. And I think they really were being punished. And I've heard other parent stories from other schools like that. It was very much a punishment because they refused to wear a mask.
Right.
Their school experience for those 2 weeks was to punish them, to show them that what they were doing was wrong. Which I don't think that
right
was wrong. It was standing up for what they believe in. And there were a lot of kids that, they can't wear a mask. Physically, they have physical issues. And we're, standing up for those kids because they were not included in this injunction. If you can't wear a mask, you can't.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of parents, because have pulled their kids, gone to homeschooling, which is hard to homeschool in the middle of a year, because the curriculum, it starts at a certain place and ends at a certain place. It's 180 days curriculum, because that's in Tennessee, that is the standard. You have to do 4 hours a day, 180 days. You're gonna need to fill out a calendar. So it's really hard to pull and separate people from the kids that they've been with for 8 weeks.
Yeah.
And the teachers that they developed a relationship with.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a lot. And it sounds like, even within the spectrum of a lot of strange things that have happened, and a lot of which don't seem to be consistent. Maybe sometimes there is a scientific rationale. Other times there certainly doesn't seem to be. It seems pretty arbitrary. But I think that for sure there are public school districts around the country that have functioned relatively well. There have been some families that have been um, relatively happy. And like one thing that we're all about for sure is not simply that all kids and all families need to do X or they all need to do Y. All families need to go away from the public school system. That is not remotely what we're saying. And so I think, but what you outlined shows clearly. I think parents understand better than anybody how their kid is wired, what their kid needs. It's not that shocking to find out that one size really truly doesn't fit all when it comes to your child's education. And here in Tennessee, we've seen kind of poll after poll show, and there's been incredible movement, actually, sort of once in a generation type movement on an issue, from supporting numbers having moved significantly in favor of supporting school choice and moving away from just the same funding mechanisms for the same districts and brick and mortar buildings. And Tennesseans are very, very much in favor of school choice. And as you know, in 2019, the legislature passed an ESA bill, Education Savings Account, which is about a little over $7,000 that families could use, not just for private school tuition, but they could use it for tutoring, for transportation, for micro schools, for any kind of educational situation that they thought would fit well for their children. And that program has been hung up in court for a good long while now, and there might be an end in sight in terms of a decision on that court case, but it could be a while. Unfortunately, one of the justices sadly passed away this past fall, and so the decision could be delayed even more. But I guess I think, having listened to you and seeing the polling, mm-hmm. and seeing what happened in the gubernatorial race in Virginia, mm-hmm. Which seemed to be very, very explicitly related to education issues and parent concerns, mm-hmm. What would you say to, I guess, critics of programs or mechanisms that give families like yourself some kind of flexibility, some kind of ability to choose your child's educational setting? I mean, it's a loaded question, obviously. Yeah. But what would you say? Your testimony up to this point is mm-hmm. pretty compelling by itself. But is there anything else that you would add?
Well, yeah. I mean, so again, schools, especially public schools, they're very rigid in what they can. I mean, there's some flexibility within a classroom, but they're really rigid, and that one size fits all does not work. And I think COVID and just how inflexible schools have been, and during that this time frame has really shown a light on that. And there are so many different kinds of choices when it comes to private schools, homeschooling, pods, micro schools, yeah. All these new things. I mean, even here in Knox County, there are schools that are taking an even stricter stance for COVID. Yeah. And so there are families that would choose that if they could. Right. And there are secular schools, there's Montessori schools, there's a Jewish school, there is a Muslim school, there's a lot of Christian schools. Yeah. There's some schools that do 3 days in class and 2 days homeschool here. Just so many choices. Yeah. And I think parents are now looking, hey, the school system is not meeting the needs of my children. Our family doesn't line up with our family values. and we want choices, and I think that this has just shown a light to that, and just kind of, well, I don't, a lot of people are, I don't want the government to have this much control over my family, and because the government has been trying to come in, needle its way into almost every aspect of our lives, and COVID has shown that to be so true. And we moved here to East Tennessee. We had been told by the Army where we had to go, and we wanted to be able to just settle down, have a nice life, choose what we wanted for our children, and COVID kind of took that away a little bit, and so we're having to pivot, change what we really thought of how we were going to go forward, like for our children's education, among a lot of other things.
Yeah.
So I think, public schools works for a lot of families, but it doesn't work for a lot of families too. And,
Yeah.
We always hear people say, well, you shouldn't take money from public schools. I'm a taxpayer. I mean, it's not, a school is not there to employ teachers or administrators. It's to educate children. And if they're not doing a good job, then that, family should be able to choose, let me take some of this money that has been set aside for my child and go pick a better choice that has better outcomes. The private school my daughter goes to is a classical model, and it teaches not, you need to learn this and this, but teaches them why and how to analyze things in a biblical way, which fits our family's values much better than the public school system.
Mm-hmm.
They have a lot, ACT scores are higher, AP class passing and getting the AP credits much higher. So, I want the best for my children, and I think all parents want the best for their children.
Yeah.
And I think we're kind of coming awake to the public schools may not be the best choice. So let's open those choices up. Maybe we can get even better results across the board for all children. And maybe even spend less money.
Yeah.
Because private schools, the amount of overhead at the private school is so much less than at a public school. If you go and look at the Knox County Board of Education, the people that work at the central office, the amount of people there is crazy. Like I'm like, what kind of job description is that? Why do you need so many people? It's just, definitely the administrative part of budget has just exploded.
Yeah.
And private schools show that that's not necessary.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. Well, I couldn't have said it any better than the way you said it just a minute ago, as far as different families need different things, and the way that things have generally been set up in terms of close to 90% of the population in the public schooling system before COVID, and the way that the relative size of the mortgage that you can afford is actually sort of the de facto sort of school choice that we've had in the past. Mm-hmm. Moving away from that to where students and families can actually access some of those taxpayer dollars and exercise some judgment on how they think their kids could be educated. Mm-hmm. Music to my ears, and I think after the last 18 months, music to millions of parents' ears. Mm-hmm. So is there anything else you'd like to add? Anything we didn't touch on that you'd really like to add? We're I guess pushing about 45 minutes here, but this has been really, really good and enlightening.
I just, before COVID, I was of the mindset that public schools were good enough for most people, a majority of people. And when they closed down, when they put all these restrictions, they became, for at least our family, not the best choice.
Yeah.
And it opened my eyes to all of the different, homeschooling, private school, what they can offer. And just it really changed my position on this, because before I was really indifferent to private schools and to homeschooling. It's good for those people, but public schools have served us well, but they're not serving us well. And it kind of opened my eyes to what some other families had been through in poor performing schools, what they've been fighting for. And it's just, it really has changed how I view a lot of things around, public education.
Yeah.
And I appreciate what y'all are doing and what they're doing at the country level up in DC. So
yeah. Well, we hope to see some progress in 2022, and maybe the ESA pilot program, and maybe some other things coming down the pike as well. So, Beth, thank you so much for giving your time and sharing your story. And it's really compelling. And I hope that folks watch this and go back and watch the recording and really get a taste for kind of what you guys have been through and kind of what your experience has been like, and why we need more choices in Tennessee.
All right. Thank you.
Great. All right. Have a nice day, Beth, and thanks again.